Hello, everyone. It's Martha Novak, and you're listening to a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak. Guys, while we are on the line, where is that light coming from? I don't know. It seems like I'm having a ghostly visitor on that side. Oh, I see what it is. It's my computer. Get that off. Guys, while I am live and in person right now, do know that we are being broadcast on Facebook Live and on Blog Talk Radio. We are out in the country. Now, it's a beautiful day. We should have good reception, but you never know, okay? So, because our speed is slow. So, do know that if I lose you on one channel, quickly go to the other one and you won't miss any of this. Also, our show are archived, as you know. So you can go back and listen to them on Blog Talk Radio or Facebook Live, whichever your preference is, or on YouTube. There's also, by the way, and I keep forgetting to say this, I have a couple of books out. One is called The Life You Want, really good book on consciousness, surrender, and on manifesting. And then there's another book called The Teacup Prophecies. These are wonderful little bite-sized bits, teacup-sized bits of information that has been culled from my radio shows, my books, and some magazine articles I've written, and a lot of other things. The thing I wanted to tell you is that book, you don't have to pay the full price for the book. If you've got an iPhone and you go to the Play Store, you can get that book for your iPhone on an app. And what that app does is it sends you information. It's interesting. We don't send one thing out to everybody. It is a personal invitation to you. It is a personal piece of information for you in many cases. So I think that's pretty special, you know. I myself don't even have an iPhone, so I can't even get my own app. But I hear from other people who have it, and it's $1, that is really wonderful. So I hope that you will take advantage of that, okay? That's the Teacup Prophecies on the, I don't know what they call it. It's called Play Store on my Samsung, but whatever the, app is for you to buy other apps. Okay, and it's $1. Today we're going to talk about, I think, a really important subject. The crux of it, for me, of course, is the difference between cults, cult-like behavior, and the real deal that has your best interest at heart. Psychologists believe, given the right time and circumstances and a lot of factors, we're all vulnerable to cults. And I think that a lot of people get into them in the, the most idealistic way. So I want us to strip everything away right now, the idealism and everything else, and I want to look at them cold in the face, and I want you to know some of the tactics and what to look for and what to be discerning about. And we've got some really interesting material for you. So let's do a prayer to get us all on the same page, and then we'll start into our live show. If you all have anything to say to me about this show, our guest call-in number is 347-850-1647. Please do use that only to call in if you want to be on the air, and I would love to put you on the air if our technology allows. And certainly go to my website under radio shows, and you can tune into the live show either through Blog Talk Radio or Facebook Live. Okay? All right, let's do a prayer. Dear God, thank you so much for everything that we are about to learn and all that we have and are living right now. We understand that there may be things we want to change. There always are. But we thank God for what we have and the fact that we created it so we can create other things and certainly more. We know you are a God of more, and we are of you. So we open ourselves now to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do as we open to the truth that lies in your enlightenment. We thank you so much. To get us ready, we say we know nothing, for it is the you through us and through all things that knows it all. And we submit to that right now, that we may hear what we may do and think of life differently, in our families differently, in our businesses differently than we ever have before. And we are grateful for it all, dear God. And so it is. Amen. Hi, guys. Good to see you. Hello, Judy. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, too sweet to say so. Thank you. I think it's a good way to start a Sunday, too, when I get to talk to all my friends. You know, it's really fun. One of the things, before we start our talk about cults, one of the things I want you all to do is open your mind to what a cult is. Because a cult isn't just some weird fringe group out there that believes in God knows what. It is actually, families can be cults. Your family of origin can be a cult. You can be in a current family that is very cult-like. You can be in an organization. Churches can be cult-like. Companies can be cult-like. So I want us to expand our awareness past what we think we know and just be open to some of these very interesting characteristics of cult leaders, and characteristics certainly of people that join the cults and why they are there. If you recognize some of these vulnerable points in you, I certainly want you to write those things down. So it's always behooves you to have a pencil and paper when we speak, and consider them, and even talk to a therapist about these. At the very end of the show, once you've heard all of these traits, we're going to tell you what, and I'll make sure we have time. I'll watch the time today, I hope. Because what I want to do is get the things that you know you can trust in. You know, when an organization runs differently than what I'm about to present to you, and I'll have those points too, I want you to know that's a more integrous group or organization or individual for you to follow, or certainly hear what they have to say. So I think that sometimes people are set up for cults. All kinds of cults. As I said, businesses can be cults. I think of one person in particular that I know whose mom was militaristic. That's the nice way, I guess, of saying that. She didn't allow laughing. She didn't allow smiling in the house. She never did encourage her child to do anything. She never said it was good. Her work was good. She never said, oh boy, you have a talent for that. She never taught her to do anything that she would need in life, like cook or other things. And so this woman grew up with an inferiority complex. And what she did was she tried to, hello, dear. Oh, to send a message, okay. Solomia has said, send a message to my mom. I was injured by artillery flakes in Ukraine. My left leg is destroyed, and she wonders if she'll survive. She says, I don't see anyone. I'm only 19. Darling, we are praying for you now. Okay? Let's do that. May we stop the show for a second and pray for Solomia? Darling, we are here in sisterly spirit for you and brotherly spirit for you. And I'm so sorry that you are injured. I know one thing is that God is right there with you, with us, with everybody. You are a joy in this life to those who know you. And you have done and will continue to do a lot of good. You are loved by people who know you and by people who don't know you. Because in the end, we all know each other, don't we? We do. So we pray for you now that you may be lifted above the pain and the fear and the loneliness, to know a deeper level of who you are as the sustaining God who's right there with you. And we say this now, in your name, Sola Mia. And certainly we deliver this message to your mom. We pray for you both. And so it is. Amen. God bless you. I'll tell you, sometimes doing the show, you just hear things that break your heart, you know? Let me breathe. Okay. So this young lady I was talking about before that touching message was raised in this very oppressive home. Her mom was a cult leader. And she told her what to do, what to think. Many times when she expressed her feelings early on, she learned not to, anyway. The mother said, you don't feel that. You feel this instead. You don't do that. Why someone raises a child like that is really multifold, and I think a lot of times the child is raised like that because the mother was raised like that. Nevertheless, when this woman grew up and became an adult, she really didn't know how to find herself. She wasn't there. She buried herself very deeply away from the mother and even away from her. She sought other people's lives that were exciting to kind of latch on to participate in. But she didn't really ever create something for herself. There are many times, and we're going to talk a lot about this, about why people seek cults. And a lot of times, the reason I'm starting here is because the family itself was rather cult-like. If you were reared in a household like this woman, you're going to seek absolutes because you're so unsure. You want somebody to be sure, don't you see? Somebody who can give us more life, who is more sure of things than we are. And of course, a good organization or a good teacher or a good anybody is going to encourage you to find that within you. Okay? Okay. So what we want to do is ask ourselves, as we are hearing these characteristics, what mind are these people coming from? Because the first article I found was a very good article written by Dan North, and it's called Narcissism Demystified, and the title of the article is 9 Ways Many Narcissists Behave Like Cult Leaders. So, it says how to recognize narcissists' manipulative and cult-like tactics. All right. So this article begins with the strategies that many narcissists use to get their way in personal relationships can be strikingly similar to the coercive tactics used by destructive cult leaders. And the reason that I'm starting with this article instead of just diving right into the cults is because I think the background you came from needs to be scrutinized, and you need to recognize, oh, isn't that interesting? I did come from somewhat of a cult when I was growing up. Now, everybody didn't, okay? Everybody didn't. But if you did, the reason I'm starting here is it's important to recognize that, okay? And then we'll launch into everything else we have to say. We have to say quite a lot. Okay. Okay, so this is how narcissists behave like cult leaders. Certainly, all narcissists are not cult leaders, but I will say all cult leaders are narcissists. I can pretty much put that on the table with a certainty. Again, to more or less degrees, because everything is to more or less degrees, right? But do know that. All right, so here we go. You can have a spouse, family member, friend, boss who has these characteristics. Important to look at people realistically. That's all, okay? Realism is the place you launch from to create a very good life once you embrace that. So, number one, cult leaders act larger than life. They claim to be innately good, possessed of special wisdom, answerable to no one, and there's no one above them, okay? So I thought that was an interesting thing. Number two, cult members are expected to subjugate their own needs for the good of the leader or cause. Members are told that the cult wants them to do what the cult wants them to do is for their own good, even if it isn't. Even in extreme cases, it's self-destructive, of course. Right? Number three, there is always an us versus them attitude. Outsiders are viewed as dangerous or as potential enemies. This turns the members' focus outward, and it distracts them from the problems within the cult and foreseeing things. You remember, here's your energy. And you can actually use your energy there or there or there. You're investing energy. I was working with a darling woman yesterday in a class, and she's had a very hard time looking at her mom realistically, and her mother and her father. And her husband is also in this class, and I turned to him and I said, let's hear what you think about this woman's mother and father. I'd like to know what you have observed because you knew them when they were alive. And boy, did he give me an earful. And I watched her as he was saying all this, and she kept saying, but I didn't see that. I didn't think so. I didn't this. I didn't that. And the interesting thing was she was reared to be such a perfectionist about everything. She was the great hope of the family, all right? She was going to accomplish a lot. Her brother, nobody cared about him. And she was so busy living up to that she didn't notice a damn thing. But I tend to believe her spouse, because all of her issues that we've been working on for a while would not be caused by this wonderful airy-fairy relationship where everybody supported her, but by what he said. And he didn't hold back. And he did say that whenever he's tried to talk to her about it before and bring her into reality, she gets very defensive. She can't hear it. She gets very agitated and angry. Darling, her attitude is not because she doesn't believe what he's saying, but because she does. And it challenges her fantasy and her mania and what she's trying to hold on to. But for God's sake, she's in her 70s. Why are you holding on to that at that age? Let's go on. You've got to get free of this sometime, right? And it's important to look at the reality of people. So there's an us versus them attitude. And I've seen this in a lot of cases with people that I work with. I know one family who the father was a minister, and he espoused all the good ministerial things that he was supposed to, but he came home and was very cruel to his family and beat his family sometimes. Okay? And that was one of the rules. What goes on in his family stays in the family. Nobody knows anything else. I know another woman who had a whole lot of children because she was afraid of people. So if she could have a community that she controlled and manipulated, that was best for her in the end, wasn't it? Before she decided to do consciousness work and grow up. So us versus them can look a number of ways. Certainly we are familiar with the extreme versions of this, the Charles Manson, the Heaven's Gate people, all these. But that's kind of present even in families and businesses, us versus them. Number 4, feelings are devalued, minimized, and manipulated. Shame, guilt, coercion, and fear keep members in line. Members are taught to discount their own, by the way, intuition and good sense and their healthy instincts in favor of the leader or cult's teaching, which sometimes are the same thing. Over time, members can lose touch with their healthy habits and innate values. When you hear something over and over and over and over, repetition is a very powerful influencer. At some point, when you don't speak back to what's being said to you, either internally or externally, you'll believe it. Silence is one of the things which helps the subconscious mind just take it in like a sponge, okay? It's certainly one of the big influences when you're a child. You hear something over and over and over and over again, like you're stupid. And you're going to believe it one day. You may be mad about it. Good for you. But you're going to believe it one day if you hear it in repetition over and over and over again, you know? Okay. Feelings are, as I said, devalued, minimized, manipulated. It's like the mother that said, you don't feel that. Who has the right to tell you what you feel? That is incredibly personal. Incredibly personal. I think, honestly, that's why I like the arts so much. Any art, painting, sculpture, acting, writing, all the other arts in the world that are out there. I like those so much because it is about the total expression of yourself. If you're doing this well, and nobody has a right to criticize that. Oh, people do. You know, they review a book or anything. Quite frankly, having written in my time, even bad books, I still applaud and I say bad books. I should say books that don't appeal to me. I still applaud that somebody had the time, the courage, and the fortitude to write that thing. Good for them. Good for them. So the arts are a place where you, if you are studying with the right person, you're safe, because it's really about the expression of self. And instead of a right or wrong, it's about doing something, learning to do something, like in an acting class, better and better and better. That's really all it's about. It's not that something's wrong, you know? And a lot of times in my classes, which are always filmed, I knew that an actor's decision was not a great decision. And I'd say, I think there's a better decision here. And they'd say, oh, no, I'm going to do it this way. And I'd say, okay, let's film it. And they could see, my cat is coming again, they could see that that wasn't a good decision. But they could see it themselves now, finally. It wasn't about their ego getting in the way, saying, oh, no, I'm going to do it this way. I've thought it through. Well, sometimes when we think things through without trying them out, you know, it's only good in theory, right? Yeah, good. So nobody really has the right to say you shouldn't feel this way. Number 5, questioning and dissent in a cult or in a cult-like household are not tolerated. Having doubts about the leader or the cult is considered shameful or sinful. Members are told that doubting or dissenting indicates that there's something wrong or bad with the member. Oh, little sweetie, don't do that. You can't come this way. I'm having my computer there now, you see that screen, to try to keep him from coming through. So he's trying the other side. Here he comes. All right, I might as well give up and put him behind me in the chair. Are you coming? This guy, by the way, there are 2 red cats in this house, and this one is Schnitzel, and he's a very, very good boy. But by gosh, you aren't going to keep him from sitting on you, especially during a radio show. Okay. The next one is questioning and dissent are not tolerated. We've just said that. But this is really important to realize because, parents do this to us. Don't question me, because I said so. Those things are not good answers anymore in a world where we're trying to be more conscious and rear children that are more aware. I think questioning and even dissent are great. I do. It makes us grow, doesn't it? I as a child sitting in my Presbyterian church, and there's nothing wrong with that, I want to say that, hello, Jay. Good to see you, darling. It's wonderful to talk with you again. I think that a lot of religions, and I think the Bible itself, I think all of us interpret these things differently as we grow up. And I was reared a Presbyterian years ago, but I sang in the Baptist choir. I went to an Episcopal school, and I dated Catholic boys. I mean, I got around. With all my religions, I think that doubting, dissenting, questioning, challenging not so much the status quo and what other people believe, but questioning within ourselves, what do we believe, is the key. It wouldn't have helped me if I had had my fist in the air all my life and I was trying to fight what Presbyterians believed. That's an organized religion. It's a dogma that has a set of beliefs, and good for them. And at one point it matched me, and at another point it did not. But there's nothing wrong with it, you see? But those questions I asked, they were important to me. It wasn't about me trying to change things. And I see this a lot of times in people, even, this is a little off the subject, but not really, going into a corporate job. And they become unhappy, or they see how things should be done differently. And they try to change this tremendously big organization. And one person that has a clerk's job or whatever is not going to be able to do that. So you either have to make your peace within what is. I had a hard time making some things just didn't make sense to me within that religion. Or we have to be able to put ourselves aside and enjoy it just for what it is. We have to leave. We have to do all sorts of things, we have lots of choices. But the fact is, you aren't going to change it. I think it's marvelous. I think religion is marvelous if it doesn't hurt anybody else and it travels with you in every circumstance of your life. And what do I mean by that? And then I'll get back to the list. Well, I had a client, this was several years ago, as a matter of fact, who had a father who was, I believe he was Catholic. Doesn't really matter, does it? but he was very, 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 very religious. He made sure he was in church morning and night. He espoused a heavy-duty religion. But she went on to tell me he was afraid his whole life. He was afraid of losing his job. He was afraid of what was coming in the door next. He was afraid of everything. That's not a religion. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Catholicism, but what I am saying is his particular religion, whatever he believed and he espoused, did not translate into his life, because he would have known that God was there. God is there, no matter what, under every circumstance. And that's what I want my darling friend who's been hit by artillery in the Ukraine to understand. God's right there. God is right there. And Jay, my friend Jay, I haven't heard from him in a while. I'm delighted you're back. Said, can you talk about mass formation psychosis related to cult? Yes, as a matter of fact, Jay, I am going to be talking about that. And good morning, LaRonda from Michigan. I'm so glad that you're with us today, too. I love hearing from all of you. So, Jay, hang on a minute. As soon as I finish this section, we are going to talk about the people that are drawn to cults and why, and how mass psychoses form. Okay? All right. Number 6 in this list, how narcissists are like cult leaders, is the end justifies the means. The rightness of the leader and cult justifies behavior that may violate most people's standards for ethics and honesty. In the zealotry of the cult, anything goes. And this is why some really horrific acts are created out of cults. But then so are the smaller acts, like taking away your individualization and who you really are, discounting your feelings. These things are small, egregious fractions of our being, of who we really are as authentic children of God, of the energy of God. Number 7, closeness to the cult leader is rewarded. Closeness to the cult and the cult leader is rewarded, while independence is punished. It can be punished in a number of ways. Certainly ostracism from the cult. And many people, and here is one of the reasons that mass psychosis is formed, many people join a cult because they want to belong. If they've never belonged anywhere, they want to belong. And that drive and that need is so extreme in there. And then you take away the fact that they've never learned to discern anything. And you've got people that are just sitting ducks for something like this. Number 8, lies are repeated so often they seem true. I think I've addressed that because repetition is one of the real ways that people can be brainwashed. You repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat, and that goes on in childhood, doesn't it, a lot of times? Yeah, and one of the things that was said to me over and over and over again when I was a little kid, and I think I mentioned this in a show 2 or 3 weeks ago, was my father believed, he came from the Depression, that era. He said, with ownership comes responsibility. So he'd give me a bicycle. With ownership comes responsibility. A doll. With ownership comes responsibility. I never played with anything. I never went nuts with anything. And I had to unlearn that when I became in the arts as an actor, as a director, and certainly as a writer, where you should have the stops off. You should be able to create something and destroy it and create it again better. I mean, that is. Yes, confirmation bias is what I'm talking about. Yes, thank you, Jay. That is absolutely right. But there's more to confirmation bias concerning cults that we'll talk about in just a minute, okay? I just happened to come around to that one. So the next, let's go into the next one, right? Okay. The next one is communication is coercive and deceptive. A lot of times confusion is created, particularly emotionally, to distract the members, to get their mind off things. I know that deflection is a really good way to confuse things. It's part of this coercive and deceptive thing. And I remember in this family where the man was the minister, he often would quote scriptures when he was punishing people. And so they didn't just think they were bad to the Father. They thought they were bad to God, you know. And it wasn't what it seemed here. He was doing things in his home he shouldn't have done. He was not looking at himself, you know. Okay. So when confused, here's another mass thing, confirmation bias. When people are confused, certainly members of cults seek solace in the aura of certainty, of the certainty of the leader. If somebody looks like they know and you don't know, you're vulnerable to listening to them in many cases, you see. So, just to finish up this article, cults and narcissists use powerful forms of manipulation. But there's nothing magical about what they do. They try to have you believe that. So understanding their methods can allow you to avoid being taken in by them. If someone is narcissistic, be mindful of sharing personal information with them because it's going to be used eventually against you. That happened this week to one of my clients who told someone who was untrustworthy a whole bunch of personal information, and right away this person used it against them. And I said to them, and this is the image that I used, well, you loaded a gun for them, handed it to them, and you're surprised that they're pointing it at you and shooting you? For God's sake, don't give them the information. Again, communication is not just about talking. The art of communication is knowing who you're talking to and what to say and what not to say. Really important. He goes on to say, in any adult relationship, you have the right to confront, prevent, or remove yourself from manipulation or coercive control at any time. That kind of oppression that I mentioned before. You don't need to give a reason. You don't need the other person's permission. You don't need to be a good little boy or girl that is in charm school and must, try to communicate. There are people that are just blooming toxic or crazy. Don't engage. Just get out. Now, that's not so easy when you're a kid. If you were a kid and you came from a household like this, it's very important for you to realize, well, that's just fine. Now is the time, as the adult, to open your mind to this and get past it. It was something that you were supposed to learn. But if you're an adult in this situation, part of your growing up is to get out. I also want to say, sometimes what goes along with narcissism is some form of mania. You know what I mean by mania? It's that heightened energy, reactive energy, where you're just reacting, you're not thinking or anything else. And do not, for any reason, challenge anybody in mania. Just walk away or say, we'll talk later when your energy comes down a little more, because they're going to fight you. And if you ever call it mania and say you're being irrational, they just can't hear it. They're trying to save their lives in some way. It's all happening in their head, but just wait. Just wait. It's going to be a bad situation if you push forward in mania. You can't get someone to be reasonable in that energy. It is an unreasonable energy, and they've got to let it pass. Okay? And of course, it's nice if you recognize that in you, that you work on not getting in that energy and being able to recognize it and stop it before you get there. And that is possible. But you've got to do some work on yourself. Okay. And his last point is that nobody has the right to tell you how to think and feel. And I agree with that. Thank you, Daniel Newharth. Okay. So here are 10 psychological reasons why people join cults. And this is by Shannon Quinn. And I think this answers a lot of your questions, Jay, because people need validation, particularly in the ego child's mind. When we're in the ego child's mind, we know we are not the adult. We know we're not the adult mind. This is the emotionally immature part of us, the part of us that, feels like we need somebody to tell us what to do. Part of us that's confused, part of us that may have low self-esteem. We haven't come into who we are. So when you meet other people just like that, that's a terrific validation. I think I've said in one of my previous classes, whenever I do run a beginning class, and I have a whole bunch of beginners in there, and they start to form their little cliques, I really move in and so does my team and kind of break them up a little bit. Because I can't have anybody validating the ego child's mind. Ego child's mind, ego child's mind's never going to get where I'm supposed to help them go. And that's, finding out who they are as their highest self. So that's one of the ways, this need for validation, because we know we're not right, that binds people like this together. Now, I'm not saying a bit that these people aren't intelligent, that are members of cults, because in many cases they are. But I will say that a lot of them have issues, and here they are, okay? They're vulnerable to a seductive recruitment process. There's always a recruitment process in these organizations that are actually cults, or very, very cult-like. According to an article written for the American Psychological Association by Dr. Philip Zimbardo, there's no type of person so much that joins the cults. There's some issues, some characteristics that go with it, but many of these people are well-educated, sensible, logical people. But he believes that anybody under the right conditions could be convinced to join a cult, because many of these seductions, if you will, are very secretive. They're very psychologically manipulative, and they're people don't talk about them, and they're seductive, if you will. That doesn't mean that you won't see them. That means that some people don't see them. And I'm trying to wake you up to seeing them. I think it's really, really important for you to have such a good sense of self that you would recognize this and go, not for me. Mm-mm. Okay. I was just thinking of a story to tell you later. A cult will promise to solve an issue in yourself or in society that doesn't seem to have a solution. Cults often offer a very structured lifestyle, pardon me, with absolute answers. You see, these people are seeking absolutes about what is right and wrong. Guys, there is no right and wrong. There's your reaction to it that puts a label on it. But if everything is God and everything is working out the way it's intended, even in the light of some personal tragedy, certainly. God's right there. And we're supposed to learn something from this and go down and connect with that lovely peace that is beyond all understanding. You see? Well, these organizations to lure you in are usually very open, loving, and welcoming. They offer you absolutes. There are almost never any obvious red flags to warn people that they're in a cult. And the longer members stay, the more they receive promises of health, wealth, and well-being. And they don't know that they're in a cult. Now, post-breakup blues tend to make you very vulnerable to cults. I was going to see, what did I do with that? They said that also, when one is rushed, stressed, uncertain, lonely, indifferent, uninformed, distracted, or fatigued, you may be vulnerable to the power of persuasions in some of these cults. And that's one of the reasons that oftentimes cults are on college campuses. Because these kids are, I know I wasn't certainly fully formed and wouldn't be able to say no. Well, actually, I did say no at one point because I was approached at one point, and certainly did. But it took me talking to a friend of mine about it who said, "Ooh, don't do that. Here's how to get out of it." You know, that kind of thing. I wasn't really into it. I just needed to write a note saying, under no circumstances am I interested in this. So you're vulnerable if you are in a transition period in your life to more or less extent. Oftentimes, too, we get into things because they seem to be about an issue that we are interested in, like social justice or something. And so someone gets into a group like that, they may fall in love. That certainly keeps you tied to that group, right? That was her motivation to stay in this case that I'm reading about right now. But what she didn't see was that she was being manipulated into isolationism. By the way, that's a common characteristic. They're going to separate you, all right? Now, isolate you from the family that actually, in this case, happened to be from another country. And she woke up one day trapped in this cult. And it took her many years to get out of it, so the article says. I just gave a class on perfectionism. I think I talked about that last week. And the reason I'm following up with this week is a striving for perfection is one of the ways that you're very vulnerable to a cult. All right, so this is the belief that there may be something better out there. Now, certainly I started that way because while I didn't out and out reject my family's Presbyterianism, I certainly felt like there was something more for me than that. That was enormously satisfying to my mama. She loved her church and loved her ministers and loved her friends and loved her God that was there in that church, and that was wonderful. I just think I had a different path. I thought of going to seminary almost my whole life, and something stopped me from doing that too. I felt that there was something that I was supposed to know, something I was supposed to get, that had to come organically. And it wasn't about me subscribing to something that somebody else believed or found for themselves. So I've been very careful my whole life in reading what other people think and what other people said was the magic formula, because I just knew I had to find something inside. This whole thing about there's something better out there, I'm not sure I felt that. He's in this article that was by Shannon Quinn. She says that in a case that they're talking about right now, that they refused to follow their family's traditional beliefs because they felt that there must be something better out there. I can't say that I ever put those words on it. I don't think I ever wanted to find something better. I just wanted to find something that meant something to me. It was that kind of thing. I remember being in college and I took a religion course, and one of the big papers, which, by the way, I failed, was Who is Jesus? Because I didn't know who Jesus was other than the rhetoric that they wanted me to spit back. And something in me didn't want to spit that back. So I don't even know what I wrote, but it was absolute crap. And I failed the course. The nice thing about that was that bothered me my whole life. Not that I failed, but that I didn't know what this Jesus was to me. And I asked questions from the inside. And through the years, that evolved and grew. If you all ever want to know, I'll be glad to tell you. But you're on that path. You answer that question. And a lot of other ones, too. So these things that look like failures are not if you learn something from them. Now, are you going to say, oh, I failed that course. What should I believe right now? No, this took years to organically come. And why isn't that all right? It is. I think if you ask the question, you're going to get the answer to everything. You just have to wait for it to organically develop and be on the path to an open mind, not a vulnerable, closed mind, fearful mindset, but an open mind and love that's full of discernment, so you can say no when it's important to say no. Okay. All right. Striving for perfectionism comes into play in many cults, Ms. Quinn says. The vast majority of cults teach their followers that they are superior to non-cult members. Ooh, do I have a good example of that? This elitism gives people an us versus them mentality, which eventually leads to people becoming socially isolated from people living in the outside world. Dr. Cath, this is according to Dr. Stanley Cath of Tufts University, noted that the majority of people who she had treated ended up joining a cult after a long history of blaming other people in their lives for their problems. If you do that, you better learn not to do that. These were people who are not used to taking personal responsibility for what they did and for their own flaws. And they continued to move forward with their idea and their goals for perfectionism at all costs. This is somebody who sometimes puts tasks before people and certainly is not self-aware on the level in which they need to be. So there's another kind of person that's vulnerable to this. Number 7, another characteristic, is people that really do want to find their purpose in life. Everybody goes through an existential crisis at some point in their lives. I've probably been through several of them, quite frankly. whether it's attaining eternal life in the spiritual realm or working day and night to change a political issue, a cult can give you a purpose in life, and it can give it to people who did not have or do not have their own strong goals, their own strong meaning to their lives. I go back to Viktor Frankl's marvelous book, Man's Search for Meaning. He went through the Holocaust, and the thing that kept him going was that he had meaning. He was working on a book, Man's Search for Meaning, when he was swept up by the Nazis and put in a concentration camp, and they took the book away, burned it, whatever they did to it. And he spent so much of his time not only observing relative to what he was writing about, but finding any little scrap of paper he could write an idea on. When he got out, he needed to write that book. When he got out, he wrote it. He gave his life meaning. We need meaning in our lives. And if you have a desire for meaning without discernment, without awareness, if you have a search for meaning in your life, and you're half in fantasy about it, this is what I mean. You're vulnerable. Because we should be able to recognize where people are coming from. How do you do that? You recognize it in yourself first. We're all deceptive little beings. We've been lying to ourselves since we came out of the womb. Correct that with the right kind of study and the right kind of therapy, and you'll be able to recognize that in others. It's true. Dr. Adrienne Furnham went on to say, she wrote about cults in Psychology Today, and he explains, it's a him, in times of confusion and uncertainty, when people feel lost, extreme groups offer absolute answers. There's that word again, absolutism, which seems to answer the questions that people have. I have a client that loves absolutes. She's still kind of teetering between the ego child's mind and the higher self mind. We have a language now, so I can say, well, what mind are you in now, girlfriend? And she says, got it. Okay. And the dithering happens to be in the ego child's mind. Higher self mind knows what you know. But the ego child's mind seeks answers from other people. The answers are out there. Well, the answers are not out there, and they never will be. Okay? And the things that we use, here's the real insidious part, the things that we use to help open our being to the God that we love and want to be closer to, which is really right there inside of us. The methods we use, like meditation and chanting and anything like that we get into, are also used by these cults. And oftentimes to the extreme, so that we're worn down. Anybody, dears, that wears you down and locks the door so you can't even go to the bathroom in a timely manner when nature calls, you better look suspiciously at that. Because God opening in you is not painful. It's not going to make you physically uncomfortable. It's not going to be humiliating. It's not any of those things. Cult leaders often offer solutions in a way that makes sense, and they know how to motivate people to devote their life, are you ready? To the leader's cause. To the leader's cause. This isn't yours. We've got to find out what yours is by opening organically to it having the right instruction along the way. Oh, really? Thank you, Jay. Yes, Peter, you're absolutely right. Peter has just said, I'm sorry, Peter, I didn't see that note come in. He said that this is black and white thinking in many cases. It absolutely is. It's all this us versus them. They're defining what's right and what's wrong. It's a very simplistic way of looking at life, isn't it? It's right or it's wrong or it's this or it's that. It's black or white. It's not black or white. That's not life. Those are just the extremes. There's a lot of other things to think about. And Jay was kind enough to say, this is what happened for the last 2 years. Well, I would love to hear about that, Jay, sometime. Really, I would, so give me a call. Or write me an email or something. We still can communicate that way. All right. By the way, this article goes on to say that Hitler was really good at this. He motivated Germans who felt as though they had little left to live for after World War I, and it was enough to convince them to join the Nazi Party. And there were a lot of people that didn't want to join the Nazi Party too, but that did because they had to save their own skin and the skin of their families. I know that for a fact. Okay, number 6 in this list is people join because they have low self-esteem. One of the tactics in recruitment that they do, and after recruitment, is love bombing, B-O-M-B-I-N-G. This is a technique where members of the group are overly loving and complimentary. And to find someone with low self-esteem, this is a huge ego boost, right? These people are not used to receiving a lot of love and flattery in their life. And this is obviously going to be a very seductive thing to someone like this. It says, if you think you don't matter, and these people are saying, oh, but you do matter. You haven't found that yet in yourself? Oh, man, you just got hooked. It's members are promised that in addition to receiving love from human beings in the group, they also will receive a spiritual love from beyond, blah, 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 blah. Well, guys, no, that doesn't, you don't have to do anything to earn God's love. You are God's love. You understand that? You are. You don't have to earn it. You just have to open to it. That's all. By getting these old, distorted ideas out of your way that are influencing how you live. Okay, Jay just said, Jim Jones, yeah, drink the Kool-Aid, drink the Kool-Aid, drink the Kool-Aid, drink the Kool-Aid. Yeah, and if you didn't drink the Kool-Aid, you got shot. Yeah. And Jay also put forth that one of the things they all say is that we're all in this together and it's us against them. Absolutely. Absolutely. But do know, in spite of the love bombing, that once people begin to question or doubt the actions of the organization or the cult leader, God forbid, this love bombing can quickly change. In order to punish anyone who questions the authority, they are subjected to public humiliation, social isolation, shunning, all sorts of things. Fearing the loss of new friendships and perhaps their intimate relationships, people stop speaking out. They'll stop speaking out. They hide their doubts and their concerns. And the types of people who are most susceptible to this kind of manipulation are those who come from broken homes and abusive relationships and cult-like families. The woman that I told you about, whose mother was all over her all the time, and it was a really oppressive home, guess what she did? She joined a cult. And even when she got out of that cult, she kept herself in the cult, in her mind. Number 5 is just a fact that women are more likely to join a cult than a man. I think women in general, and I'm really not sexist about this because boy, do I know many fine men who have gone on this journey too. But I think the way we are wired to be, if you think of our DNA and what women traditionally did in even tribal systems, we were the caretakers. We were responsible for healing, and cooking and keeping people going emotionally, and we were oftentimes the spiritual leaders of groups like that. So women tend to be more open, more available, more sensitive, and that is not to say that men are not, because they certainly are. Another thing I think that factors into this is certainly we were, as women, reared to almost to lack purpose other than being a wife and a mother. I'm so glad the world is changing because women are smart and talented and marvelous in so many cases. But we are, and I think as individuals, we must stand there partnered and unpartnered. We have to be our own independent person. We do. But many times women are trained to seek someone who will give us a life instead of making our own. The world's changing about that. But look at what you were taught. Please, look at what you were taught. This article goes on to say that the fewer opportunities a woman feels she has in her life, the more vulnerable she is to some charismatic cult leader. Now, again, this isn't the true opportunities that are out there. This is what you think your opportunities are, right? This is your perception. Okay. Number 4 can be someone can be susceptible because they want someone to take care of them. I think this was certainly true of the woman I told you about from the oppressive home. She never did learn any kind of independence. She just was oppressed in her early childhood home. And so when she grew up, she needed another mother to oppress her. She needed another somebody to take care of her because she didn't think she could do it herself. So many cults form communes where members of the organization are promised free room and board in exchange for community service, prayer, and loyalty to the leader. For anyone searching for a utopian society, which, by the way, you're not going to find here on Earth, or for those who are struggling economically, this can seem a pretty attractive option. People are vulnerable who crave the security like that, and a cult comes in and provides it. And if they didn't give enough love and support from their families of origin, here again, they're sitting ducks for this. These people want the protection of a parental figure who will save them from the outside world. Guys, in consciousness work, I want you to realize, in consciousness work, you must be the adult. You've got to turn into the beneficent mother and father by coming out of that egoic child's mind and becoming the higher self mind, which that beneficent mother and father are in that energy. You can't stay the child. It's not going to work. Rather than living independently, the article goes on to say, and being responsible for their own finances, housing, healthcare, and safety, cult leaders promise to take care of all adult responsibility in exchange for obedience. Woo! I hate that word. Obedience. Obedience? This desire to be taken care of is ultimately what leads many people to stay in the cult. They put themselves into a situation where they need the leader of the organization in order to survive. Now, keep in mind, it doesn't make much sense logically. But if you came from the kind of house, if you came from any kind of cult-like situation when you were a child, you grew up knowing you were not surviving, and your entire survival depended on your mother and your father. You understand that? So there is a fundamental belief system. Yeah, thank you, Peter. He says, bingo, obedience. He doesn't like the word either, I guess. That is ridiculous. This fundamental issue in our childhood is there that says we have to depend on our parents or we won't survive. Well, that was true then, but it's not true now. You can walk away from anybody. Okay. I'm going to hurry here because I want to get to why, what to look for, certainly in true organizations that have your best interest and true people. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So let me hurry through the rest of this. Number 3 in this article is trying to save the world. A lot of times these organizations tell you that the world outside of the cult is doomed, and they emphasize how bad the world is and how, the world is getting, they're playing on your fear, as a matter of fact, that things are just getting so out of control. It's scary, man-made and natural disasters coming in proliferation. Okay. And there's a great quote in this article. They mention who quoted this. I don't want to mention who did it, and I don't want to mention the organization, but listen to this quote. And what I want you to do, having listened to this show, and you know the difference now between the ego child's mind and the higher self mind, listen to this quote. So he's talking about the organization. The organization has the ability to create new and better realities. Well, that's true to a certain extent if it's the right one. You see, they're kind of playing with the truth here. And improve conditions, which probably is true to a certain extent. Being part of this organization, you look at someone and you know absolutely you can help them. Guys, that is egoic to the max. Do you think when I'm in private session with you that I'm thinking, oh my God, I can help them. I and I alone can help them. That's going to be part of this quote. The attention is on me, don't you see? The energy is on me. It's not on you. It's not on going with you and helping you and doing the best I can. It's on me. I can do it. I want you to see the difference in this. I want you to be able to discern when somebody is talking to you like this. Yeah, well, thank you, Jay. He says a great show topic for the time we're facing right now. Ain't that the truth? And all of it. Okay, so let me go on with this quote because it's just really telling. Being in this organization, when you drive past an accident, it's not like anyone else driving past the accident. It's not like anybody else. Is he putting himself as separate and better or not? No, as you drive past, you know you have to do something about it because you know you're the only one that can really help. Holy Moses. Not only is this guy putting himself above others, but it's all about him, not about God, not about the person that's suffering. Do you see what it's about? So we've got to wake up to what people are saying, what organizations are saying, what the news is saying. Who is it about? And I challenged a lot of my people in the beginning classes that I teach, and I said, okay, tell me a story. And we said, all right, tell me a story now that's all about you. Tell me the same story that's all about the situation, and tell me a story that's all about the person other than you in the story. And it really brought home this kind of egocentric thing that we all have that we want to rise above. Because it's very hard to leave yourself out of the story. Okay. So, trying to save the world. These people are the only ones in the entire planet who care for another human being and care for human beings in general. Guys, for young idealistic people, this is particularly poignant and particularly a hook, because they have a deep need to make a difference in the world. They don't know who they are. They're latching on to organizations so they belong. Being a part of an organization like this is quite attractive. Now, number 2 is people are attracted to cults that are fed up with society. When you see horrible injustices in war, you can just say, I don't want to be part of this anymore. And certainly that is, you might join a group because you think society is so oppressive, and you might find out that that group is equally suppressive. And then we talked about the last thing, which is you have no idea it's a cult. You just have no idea. Let me see if I can read this real fast before we go into what I absolutely want to go into. So, predisposing factors. This is another article that is hurrying, Who Joined Cults and Why, by Janya Lalich and Madeline Tobias. So here is that list, and then we'll go into our list. A desire to belong, somebody who is unassertive, the inability to say no and express criticism or doubt. Number 3, gullibility, impaired capacity to question critically what you're being told, what you observe, people that cannot think critically, and so forth. This is certainly the lack of discernment that makes you gullible. Number 4, a low tolerance for ambiguity. They need absolute answers, impatience to obtain answers. Let me put on the table, we are in a time of great uncertainty, and we're going to remain there. So, you better make your peace with it. You better know that God is in this moment, and be so sure of that through your dear and conscious and wonderful work on yourself that you know it. And that takes going through these layers of unknowing that, that our ego child's minds have presented. We have to address those things. We have to see those things are not true, so we can have a tolerance to not knowing. Number 5, cultural disillusionment, alienation, dissatisfaction with the status quo. Number 6, idealism. Number 7, susceptibility to trance-like states, possible hallucinogenic drug experiences. I question that one a little bit, because I work real hard to make sure I'm in the right state for you. Some people would call that a trance. I make sure I'm in this when I do private sessions, so that Martha's opinion, gets pushed out of the way, and I'm trying to talk to you from a higher level of me, and the truth that I see, which you have a right to dissent about or entertain the idea, but I'm not here to tell you what to do. No, it may sound like that from time to time. My husband thinks so, but I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just putting some ideas on the table, and I want you to see what you want. I'm trying to hold something lovely for you, if you choose to get there, which you may see too. But it's just an open space where you get to be who you are. Okay. A lack of self-confidence is also something that makes you susceptible. Desire for spiritual meaning, ignorance of how groups do manipulate people. Yes, thank you, Peter, indeed. So let me get to this, and I think I really need to get to, which is why, how do I say this? The organizations or the people that you should trust are the following, okay? They emphasize that they're just a person like you. They may have had a little more study or whatever, but they're just a person. They're not a god. They're not some great leader that has magical powers. And this leader facilitator emphasizes your connection to God, not their own. I said when we first started my advanced classes years ago, when everybody was a beginner, they kept trying to make me the guru, and I kept saying, stop that. I am not your guru. No, I'm just me. You do me a disservice just not seeing me as me. Your emphasis is on the God that you are, the aspect of God you are, and bringing that forth and challenging the ego child's mind inside of you. Now, if anything takes you off that, guys, and is telling you to worship a person, you better look at that. Number two, in very spiritual work, the higher mind work, your needs will never be subjugated, but rather explored and supported. They will also teach you how to meet your own needs, so you don't look so much to the needs outside. But if you do need something from the outside, you'll see very clearly who you need to call, and you'll be motivated to do so. Number three, rather than an us versus them mentality, a good person, a good organization emphasizes the oneness with all life and that we're all part of it. Yeah, well, that's true. Jay says we're in quite a spiritual war right now, and I say we are. I don't believe in a devil, by the way. I think our egos are doing a fine job of this all over the world. It's ego against ego. Oh, my God. But when I get, and I'll just give you this tip because it means something to me, when I get upset, when there's a story that comes through, like today, as a matter of fact, and what happened at the beginning of the show, I go to God and I say, well, what should I do about this? And God says, just do your job. Do your job one person at a time. Know that I'm right there in every situation. And all things are going to your good. And don't stop the energy. And do your job. And that's what I'm trying to do. We are not supposed to have the answers to the big questions right now. They have to evolve, and the world has to change before they fully evolve. And we're just a small part of that. And we always will be. So do the best you can. And it's about individual consciousness right now. It's not about changing the world. It's about what you believe. And if there are enough of you that believe something wonderful and pure and real, that's what the world will eventually become. And that's why I do what I do every Sunday morning and all through the week. Okay. There is a oneness with all life, but people don't know that until they are playing in the fields of their potential. And then you see it everywhere. Number 4, in this true work that we're talking about that's out there in the world, feelings are explored and encouraged and talked about and put in proper perspective. You're not told to deny them. This cult that I was talking about, that this woman joined that was in such a suppressive childhood, said that feelings didn't matter. They absolutely did not allow feelings in that cult. Okay. How are you going to ask the question if you don't see the signposts that say anxiety or sadness, or you're supposed to see that sign and then go down and find out what that's all about? That's what self-discovery is. But of course that cult, while they espouse self-discovery, did not self-discover. Isn't that interesting? I have a feeling we're not going to finish, but I'm going to keep going. In true work, questions and dissent are welcome. It's a discussion, okay? Number 6, you should never have to cross your boundaries and surrender your values. So you better know what they are. These things are honored if you're in the right place. Number 7, your independence is celebrated. Now, there's an ego independence where we think we're being so much different from everybody else, and we're not. And there's a higher self independence, which is what we should be encouraging in these organizations. Number 8, nobody lies to you in an organization that's good and true and trustworthy. Number 9, there's no manipulation of you. Number 10, there's no recruitment of you. Oh, yes. John said he raised 2 fine boys, and that certainly helps to make the world better. And I think so too, darling. Good for you. Number 11, nobody's going to take money from you in a good organization. You may pay for my therapy sessions or anybody else's, but it's a pay-as-you-go kind of thing. It's not, it's not going to, it's nice and clean. It's not, you have to give this amount of money to the organization and this. No, you pay for the 2 hours of your session. That's it. That's it. You can leave any time in a good organization. If you're in the right organization, they'll honor you for your decision. They'll say, let's keep in touch, and they mean it. Any organization worth their salt honors the individual, supports, mentors, inspires, and encourages the authentic you. If any warning signals go off in you that this isn't right for me, please listen to that, okay? Well, that's right, and Jay is saying right now...
90 seconds.
90 seconds. Jay is saying it's all about self-love, and it is, but here's the problem. If you don't know how to do that, to self-love, to self-honor, to do that, you really don't know how to protect yourself because you don't have that sense of self. And all of this is about, we have to develop that sense of self, who you really are, in that marvelous energy of the higher self. We must get you past these energies of the ego child's mind that make you vulnerable, you see? Now, I love you. I truly do. And I hope this has been a bit enlightening so you can approach this with discernment. Look, I'm for anything that makes people's lives better, but a lot of times they get into things that don't make their lives better thinking it would. And I hope that helps a little bit for you to see past the curtain. Guys, we'll be back next week with another thing. I think we're going to probably talk about loneliness next week. I think that's a good topic to talk about right now. And it's a bit isolating with the quarantine still going on, And I will do some, thank you, John. I love you all very much. Till next weekend. Thank you, Jay. I love you guys. Y'all take care of yourself and please be healthy and well out there, okay? Support yourself and that good heart of yours, but don't be so idealistic you can't see what people are doing, please, okay? God bless you. Take care. God loves you through you. Don't forget. All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, Scarlett.